So we're going to use microcurrent energy. So we're going to apply electricity to his scalp, and that's going to go through his brain. And so the reason we call it microcurrent is because we're going to put picowatts. So we're going to use 2.5 picowatts, which if you're not an electrical engineer, that means nothing to you, right? Okay, so that's 2.5 trillionths of a watt. So again, well, what does that mean? So the cell phone that you just had in your hand, that cell phone is putting 1,000,000 times more energy into your body than the microcurrents going through the brain. And you're not afraid to touch your cell phone, right? Okay. That's kind of scary to think about. It's putting 1,000,000 times more energy into your body, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference? Well, the energy going from your phone is radiating throughout your whole body. Okay, so that's going through skin and bone and muscle and tissue. So that 1,000,000 times energy is radiating throughout your whole body. So we're going to use 1,000,000 times less energy. Well, how in the world can that be effective? Well, because it's only going from one wire to the next. So it's localized, and the brain is 70% fluid. It's a very good conductor of electricity, right? Mm-hmm. So we just need to use a little tiny bit of electricity to stimulate the neural pathways. So when that happens, it can cause neurogenesis. It can cause new brain cells to grow. Okay, great, we're going to apply electricity to the brain. How are we going to do that? Okay, so we have the computer, which has our software program on it. And then the laptop connects to a little black box that's an EEG amplifier. From the EEG box, we have 5 wires. Okay, the 5 wires, the first 3 that we hook up are reference wires. What does that mean? So the first wire goes on the back of the neck, and that's the ground wire. You have to ground something to complete an electrical circuit. Mm-hmm. Then, behind each ear, we're going to put a receiver. So there's 2 brown wires and there's 2 yellow wires. So the 2 yellow wires can only talk to each other, and the 2 brown wires can only talk to each other. Brown and yellow cannot talk to each. They can't cross-communicate. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we put the brown wire behind the right ear and the yellow wire behind the left ear. So then the brown wire that's not behind the ear is the transmitter. Okay, that's the active wire. They're going to move that wire to 12 different locations on head. Okay, so how it works is the transmitter, both transmitters send a signal at exactly the same time. That energy is going to go from the transmitter through the brain to the receiver. And then that signal goes back to the computer, and the computer looks at his brain. It's going to look at the EEG, it's going to look at his brain waves, and it's going to look at the frequency spectrum, which is the signal going from his brain down his spinal cord. And then from there it goes to the heart and the lungs and the kidneys and the liver, every organ in the body. So the signal leaves exactly the same time. Bing! Even though it left at the same time, they might not be received at the same time. Why is that? Because of the neural pathways, and you have billions of them. Every human being has billions of neural pathways. They're like little roads, okay? So if this was one side of your brain, these are neural pathways. And this is the other side of your brain with neural pathways. Ideally, they would line up perfectly like that, okay? So let's say you were a healthy baby. The day you're born, your brain is perfectly balanced. It's not fully developed, but it's perfectly balanced. So your brain is functioning the way it's supposed to. Well, then what happens to us? Well, life happens to us. So when you're 7 months old or 8 months old or 9 months old, you start learning how to walk, and you fall down and you bang your head on the coffee table. It happens to everybody, right? Well, that's a micro trauma to the brain. Well, when you have that micro trauma, it can cause some neural pathways to get misaligned. If it's severe enough damage, it can actually break the neural pathways. But now remember, you have billions of these, right? Okay. So the human body will repair itself. So your brain can fix itself. But if there's enough damage or if it's severe enough, then it probably can't fix it. Well, what happens as we get older? Well, walking isn't good enough anymore. Now we have to run. So now when we fall down, it's an even bigger impact. And then we go to grade school and we're on the monkey bars and we fall off of the swing set. So then we're in gym class and we're playing dodgeball and we're getting bonked in the head, damage to the brain. Then we get old enough to drive cars, and teenage boys aren't real good drivers, so they're running into things and bouncing their head off the steering wheel. So you see how damage happens, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, what other things can damage your brain is sleep deprivation, if you're not sleeping well. If you're eating a horrible diet, that can cause chemical imbalances in your brain. Mm-hmm. If you're consuming lots of alcohol or heroin or crystal meth, those things damage your brain. If you're as a child and you have abusive parents or abusive relatives or you're being bullied, yes, that you can suffer emotional damage, which can cause a rewiring of the brain. So with neurofeedback, when we hook the system up, we have one circuit that's on the right hemisphere and one circuit looks at the left hemisphere. And the computer knows which circuit's on which side. So they turn the system on and it sends the signal through the brain. It goes to the receivers and then it goes back to the computer. Now, that signal, that's happening hundreds of times a second. Way faster than you or I could perceive that. Okay? But the computer can easily track that. So the computer is going to figure out, is one side of the brain working better than the other? Now, it's quite possible that your brain is working exactly the same at a specific location. If that's the case, the computer figures that out and it really doesn't need to do any work there. So eventually, they're going to put the wire at a place where the computer's going to find an imbalance. Okay? So let's talk about imbalance. So I've done over 2,000 neurofeedback treatments. So I've seen a lot of people. I've only found 3 brains that I didn't find an imbalance in. So it's very normal to find imbalances. So as they're going from site to site, the computer will find the imbalances. So if the right side is functioning at this level and the left side's functioning at this level, the computer will start to stimulate and massage this side and make its function level come up to this level. Okay? And it could be either side could be working better or both sides could be working the same. The computer's going to figure that out. And when it starts to stimulate and massage, it's sending that energy through there. It's causing your brain to wake up and get itself from an unstuck position.
Wow.
Well, first it will bring them to balance. That's the first thing we try to achieve. But once we've achieved that, it's possible that they can both come up.
Or a certain 7, right?
So yes, that can happen. The first thing it wants to do is get you to balance. But then, as it's stimulating and massaging your brain, that will cause it to come up to its highest level. Now, is all of that going to happen in one session? It's possible. But even if we move it closer to balance in one session, that's a success, right? So every human being and their brain is different than every other human's. I mean, they're very similar. The anatomy is the same. But if you sat in the chair and got the same treatment that I got, your brain may respond differently than my brain does. Okay? So that's why the computer is adjusting itself constantly. So it's trying to make me function at my highest level, and it will do the same thing for your brain. But that may be completely different settings, and it may take one treatment to get me to a super high level. It may take you 3 or 4. Everybody responds differently. So We don't know until you sit in the chair. But the great thing is every human being responds to this. Don't give up. I mean, give this thing a chance to work, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. You'll see changes in the right direction. Today's treatment they're doing on him is the introductory treatment. They've never looked at his brain, and his brain has never talked to a computer like this before. So we're doing an introduction. Okay. We want to look at the whole brain, and we want to try to balance the whole brain. But we're not treating a specific problem today. But if we work on every part of the brain, then we're actually working on anything that could possibly be wrong a little bit. We want to see how his brain responds to the system. So what is a response? So a response is a good thing. We're trying to get a good response. It's possible he could sit here and not have any response. I mean, that's a very small chance. Or another thing that could happen is he would have a reaction. Ooh, well, what would a reaction be, and when would it happen? Okay, so a reaction is not a bad thing. A reaction is actually kind of a good sign, because it indicates that the brain is shifting. But it's uncomfortable, because his brain is used to being a certain way, and we're moving it, and that may cause him to feel some discomfort, and so that would manifest in a reaction. Well, what would that be? What would that look like? So wired, tired, spacey, or if he feels dizzy or nauseous. Okay. The other thing is if he gets the onset of a headache. Okay, so wired, tired, spacey, dizzy, nauseous, or a headache. If you're well hydrated before you do your treatment, so make sure you're drinking water. Like really, he should have had to go and pee right before he sits down. So you're well hydrated and the brain's well hydrated. That really helps rule out the headaches. Okay?
Yeah, he's probably not really well hydrated.
Okay, so after his treatment today, get him to start drinking some water. That will keep him from getting a headache later on.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, when would the reaction happen? So, well, first off, only about 5% of people during a first treatment have a reaction. So it's a very small amount anyway. And the reaction typically occurs while they're sitting in the chair getting the treatment.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So if you're done with the treatment and you take the leads off and they get up out of the chair, they're probably not going to have a reaction later. They've responded well to the treatment. Also, the system is very effective for treating addiction. Heroin, cocaine, meth, alcohol,
Chocolate.
cigarettes. So your brain repairs itself, it regenerates and rejuvenates when you sleep. Okay? So what we typically see after a first treatment is the person gets out of the chair. If they have chronic pain in their body, like fibromyalgia, they'll get up out of the chair and the pain's completely gone. So that's like instantaneous. You can say, wow, that actually worked. Or if a person was having a migraine headache, the headache will go away during the treatment. So they can say instantaneously, hey, that worked. So we want to see what his response is, okay? So probably, typically an hour to an hour and a half after the first treatment, the person will start to get tired. Now remember I said a reaction was wired, tired? Okay, that's during the treatment. Getting tired afterwards is a response. That's a good thing. Well, why is that happening? We eat food every day. The reason we eat food is to make energy. Okay, on a normal day, you make a certain amount of energy and the body uses about half of that energy and your brain uses the other half. That's a normal day. Well, this isn't a normal day for his brain. He just did a major exercise with his brain. It's using a lot more energy than it normally does. Okay? So a little while from now, as his brain is continuing to move towards balance, it's going to use more energy. Well, where's that energy going to come from? So his brain is going to tell his body, hey, I need to use more energy. You need to use less energy, so you need to lay down. quit moving because I need to use the energy. So that manifests itself in, hey, I'm tired, I want to take a nap. It's a good sign, okay? Tonight, when he goes to sleep, he will probably go into a much deeper sleep than he normally goes into. That's a good thing because it's going to allow the brain to continue that move towards balance. So a lot of times you won't see a change until after the first big sleep cycle. When he wakes up tomorrow is kind of when you can expect to see what he's going to, how he's going to move.
Is there usually an average of how many sessions somebody needs?
No, that's the magic $64,000 question. So well, I'll tell you this. It seems like the worse somebody's condition is, the quicker they respond. Because the change is so noticeable, okay? So if we just have to make small adjustments, well, it's not going to be quite as noticeable.
Right.
But, so let's say a person has bad migraine headaches. That's typically one treatment and no more migraine headaches. So usually it's one and done. Fibromyalgia. Okay, so the person has pain all over their whole body. They'll get out of the chair after the first treatment and it's miraculous. They have no pain. That's awesome. How long do they stay that way? Typically 5, 6, 7 days. There'll be no pain. But then on the 7th day or the 8th day, they'll wake up and they'll go, oh man, pain's starting to come back. Okay, no problem. Come get another treatment. They'll get out of the chair after the second treatment. They're like, the pain's gone, it's great. Okay, how long is it going to stay that way? Well, usually it doubles. So now they're going 10 days, 12 days, 14 days. But on day 15, they wake up and it's like, oh man, it's coming back. All right, come back and do another treatment. Now they go 30 days, 40 days without pain. So the duration gets better and the effect gets cumulative. And then there'll be a magic treatment. Maybe it's number 4, maybe it's number 5, maybe it's number 6. They have no pain and it never comes back. Every time we're working on the brain, we're balancing it and we want it to hold. But sometimes the brain will slip back because it's used to being the other way. Okay, so hopefully it doesn't slip all the way back. So on the next treatment, we get them balanced, and then if it slips back, it doesn't go all the way back. So every treatment improves, and then eventually there will be a treatment where it holds. Okay, that's what we want to get to. Let's say we get you balanced and you're good. And it's a year down the road or 2 years down the road, and then all of a sudden something happens. You have a concussive event or you start losing sleep or whatever. Something causes your brain to go out of balance. Okay, no problem. Come back and get a tune-up. You haven't had a treatment in 2 years, right? It's not a series of tune-ups because your brain remembers the system. So as soon as you sit down and they start giving you the treatment, your brain's going to go back to balance very quickly. There's all different kinds of neurofeedback and there's biofeedback and, well, okay, so what makes this one different? Okay, so when you go to see a specialist, some kind of therapist has said, okay, you have some kind of neurological problem. Maybe they can figure out what caused it or maybe they can't, but you've got a problem. And so we want to fix it. So a lot of times they'll prescribe drugs. Well, drugs are not going to fix anything. They're treating the symptom. They're not treating the cause. Okay? So you're never really going to get better just by taking drugs. So you need to do something to treat the cause. So then they may say, okay, well, I want you to try neurofeedback or biofeedback. So what they are trying to do, and all the other forms are going to be what I call active neurofeedback. By that I mean the person getting the treatment has to actively participate. They have to do something. Well, what are they doing? They are trying to teach your brain a new behavior. They're not really fixing your brain, they're teaching you a new behavior. Okay, so they're treating your brain like it's an 8-week-old puppy that you just brought it home. Well, what's that puppy gonna do? It's gonna go to the bathroom in the house, right? Until you teach it to go outside. So you taught the puppy a new behavior. Well, that's what other neurofeedback is doing with your brain. They're trying to teach you a new behavior. This is a passive system. You could be asleep during the treatment. You can read a book during the treatment. You could just sit there and close your eyes because the computer is going to do all of the work, and it's not teaching you a new behavior. Your brain is going to put itself back to its original default setting. It's going to go back to a correct normal behavior. And this system adjusts itself. Feedback, it's adjusting itself based off of what his brain is doing. On the other neurofeedback, you have to adjust your brain off of what the computer's doing. So this is the exact opposite.